It is New Year's Eve. I know that during the New Year's, we all make intentions and resolutions, and I, for one, myself and family members, we kind of have this tradition where we get together and make vision boards for the next year. Last year, mine was a digital vision board, but it's a time to really take stock and, take inventory of what are our goals for the next year. How did 2021 go? What were some of the, ups and downs and tragedies and, setbacks and thorns and roses that we had to overcome? I figured I could do a digital version this year of, just kind of looking back. I know at the beginning of 2021, it seemed like it was a different world. We had come out of a global pandemic and, there was actually nothing on the horizon as far as like having a for sure vaccine. Of course, there were people out there working on it, but 2020 was a year of such uncertainties, and we kind of got used to the new normal being working from home and ordering in and not really kind of going out because COVID, and then the variants that started showing up all throughout 2021. And so it just kind of gets you to thinking about how uncertain things were in 2020, and then 2021 was just business as usual, where things were still politicized, as far as wearing masks. And it's not just the United States where things got so political over the debate to wear a mask or not wear a mask, to get vaccinated or to not get vaccinated. It seems like vaccines actually became politicized, and you can have your differing opinions, but I just think that it was a very difficult year, and it was full of the same I think we got used to something that was still going on, and so that you had a lot of folks saying like, oh, well, we're out of the pandemic. I know that personally I dealt with a lot of personal tragedies, ranging from the passing of my father. I ended up stepping away from a role that I had really coveted as far as a job, and just kind of leaving that. And then my sister faced a lot of personal tragedies and just challenges. I know that her son, my nephew Hudson, was actually born prematurely, a month. She had to deal with the baby's fight. He was really like fighting for being healthy and really getting the chance to fully develop. And then on top of that, she lost her house in a fire, and I know that our family kind of rallied together, the community, and my friends. I shared her story. We had Hillary Golston come right into my living room here and interview Gloria, talking about domestic violence and the havoc that it causes. And there was that, and then of course just dealing with planning a funeral, losing the patriarch in my family who meant so much, who raised me, and as many of you may know my story or maybe not. It's my birth mother really wasn't able to raise us Lions kids. There's 4 of us, and my siblings and I, we were mostly raised by my birth mother's sister. So like my birth mother gave her kids to her big sister and said, hey, can you take care of them? And at a certain point, she was just mentally unstable and couldn't, with schizophrenia and bipolar disorders and all sorts of things, that she really couldn't ever really be stable enough to raise her children. I was raised by the Mayweather family, so my mom and dad adopted us, and they became my mom and dad. They were honestly the only parents I knew. I always knew that Trish was my birth mom, but I never really connected with her on that level and bonded with her on that level of mother. So she was there in and out, when she was stable, when she could try to be there. And I think I even appreciate that. That's something I don't think I've ever really talked about here, and very few people actually know. But he was my dad in every sense of the word, and he stepped up and took care of us when he didn't really have to. And he was there for 35 years of my life, for everything, graduations, and he was always working, so he couldn't really make it to stuff like games, or I didn't play sports and that kind of stuff. No way. I was a weirdo who sat in the library and read books all the time, so it's not like I had games or activities or anything social. it really, and then to kind of watch, you know, my mom lose the love of her life, the person that she had been married to for, it was, you know, the month he died was actually the month of their 40th wedding anniversary. So on top of that, I immediately, after, you know, trying to help my sister pull everything together, help my mom grieve, help and grieve myself with the loss of my dad, and it just immediately jumped into a campaign where my dad kind of said, like, hey, I think you should just run for city council, run for re-election, don't worry about running against that lady. And he met her once and he was just like, oh, don't run against her, you know, just stay there a little bit longer and, you know, get more experience on city council. And he just said, you know, run for re-election. And I'm like, nope, gonna run for mayor. So I ran for mayor, and I immediately put all of my energy, I think I was avoiding really sitting down and grieving, put all of my energy into running for mayor of my hometown, Harper Woods, from end of June, like July, all the way up until November. It was a non-stop marathon, and it was door knocking. I knocked on 6,000 doors in the city twice, you know, and did lots of lit drops. So like the first time was really conversation, so that took months to get through every door and go, you know, it was me by myself. Then I recruited my best friend Laura, and then it was, you know, folks like interns from Wayne State, and another intern who, she actually reached out to me when Sierra Smith, hey Sierra, reached out to me when I was just on city council and I didn't even announce I was running for mayor, but she's like, hey, and I'd like to help with the campaign too. So it was me and Sierra, or me and Laura, out there door knocking. And then eventually, that's another thing, I started seeing someone, and I kind of kept it under wraps. You know, we had a friendship that kind of evolved into, you know, a romance that at first I was like, no, because you work for the city and it would just be awkward. And, you know, then I just kind of decided to surrender to what was happening. And, you know, it was probably April that I think our feelings really were heightened, and April, May, and he was there for me all throughout, you know, my dad's decline, when he just, you know, his condition started declining, got worse and worse and worse, and he was just a shoulder to cry on. So in May and June, he officially asked me if, you know, I would be his girlfriend. So he actually works for the fire department in the city of Harper Woods. And so essentially we started dating, and at first I'm just like, nope, not telling anybody that we're dating at all, not even letting any of this out, especially because I think people would automatically, especially since I was looking for the endorsements of the police, the Fraternal Order of Police, and from the IAFF, as far as my campaign for mayor. I'm just like, nope. But honestly, even though I ended up getting the endorsement, I don't think it had anything to do with, you know, our relationship. It was more, I had already had a prior in, you know, just being invested in the fire department. I had a prior interest in, you know, making sure that our fire department had what they needed, and that their voices were heard, their concerns were heard, and that they had an ally on city council. You know, I just kind of continued to do my due diligence, to do my research, to, you know, look into the feasibility of, you know, things that they, you know, wanted to have, you know, to make their job, the hard work that they do, more possible, and like not having to, you know, do so much with so little. So I started doing research into looking into the feasibility of having an ambulance, and not to get into the weeds of local politics for those of you who like, oh, what does all this mean? I was doing a lot of this research, and I asked for the endorsement, and, you know, I did my research. So, you know, I think that they could have easily gone with anybody else, and it's just like me dating one person does not mean anything. So I got that endorsement, and once that came, my boyfriend actually did start going out and door knocking with us, and so it was just like a small team, and Sierra's idea was to bring more Wayne State University interns, my alma mater, to be able to help the campaign. So we campaigned for months, lost the election, and not to get too much into the election, I felt like I learned a lot of hard lessons. You know, it got very personal, very nasty. People were talking about, oh, well, I don't want her to be my mayor. She lives with her parents. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. I've lived with my parents when I was on city council, and that didn't stop you from voting for me. And so what? You know, I'm still a resident here. And at that point, I was buying this house. You know, so I was already transitioning into this house anyway, so that wasn't a real campaign issue. So I'm like, okay, yeah. All right, let's talk about the real issue, which is housing availability. Let's talk about the affordability of housing and why it's so hard for millennials to actually, you know, achieve the American dream of becoming a homeowner with so much crippling student debt. And, you know, that's the thing. I stayed at home longer to be able to take care of my bills and to be able to afford to make that leap, you know, maybe later in life to some people, but, you know, 35, 36, 37, that's the average age for a homeowner, a single, particularly looking at the demographics even too. African Americans, you know, become homeowners later and later at, like, you know, around the ages of approximately 38 to 40, 48 in some cases, you know, is the average, you know, first time homeowner purchase, you know, for many African Americans. And, you know, then you put in being a millennial, and then that, you know, just those are a lot of different factors. So, you know, I tried to make sure that I stayed above board and didn't play into some of these silly things. But to get back to the whole point, New Year's resolutions, I learned a lot of lessons this year about how to be resilient. And, you know, I just hope that I can continue on in 2022 to be intentional and to be, you know, to learn from these lessons, to be tougher, to be, you know, more intentional about the time that I spend with. Since my New Year's resolution video just sort of suddenly dropped out, I'm going to wrap up and just say that some of the things and goals for 2022 are to just be more brave and kind of trust my instincts, rely on my instincts. And then, of course, I have fitness goals, which I'm going to share in another video, just talking about, you know, resuming my workouts. I was very consistent with the types of workouts. I'd also like to take on learning something like martial arts, Krav Maga, or maybe even boxing, and then go back to veganism, train for a half marathon for the Detroit Free Press Marathon, the half one. I do have a treadmill, which was a wonderful Christmas present. And, you know, so then I would like to get back to some of the language goals that I have, which are to be more consistent with the language learning and, you know, just more intentional with my goals and, you know, really refresh the languages that, you know, I love to speak. But then there's also the language series. I know that in February we did the whole African languages. I would really like to revisit that and spend some quality time with languages like Somali. It was actually really fun to learn that. And so I think that also focusing on like small business initiatives in my community, and then partnerships with Ernest T and really expanding the business model and you know, coming up with more teas and more creative ways to market. And then of course I just moved into a new home and I have my fireplace here. I don't know if you could see it, but I'm just gonna let this down. There's a fireplace, yay! Okay, so I would like to, you know, just kind of spend some time focusing on the house and, you know, having it look the way that I want it to, and, you know, focus on design. So yeah, those are my New Year's resolutions, and I know some of you have fitness goals, so I have signed up with Body by MK, who was my fitness coach since about 2020. I've been with her like on and off since November of 2020, and I have actually saw a lot of results. And then I got with Coach Kiwi with the Women Who Lift, and then I proceeded to gain the weight back after the election was over. But to me, it was more about maintenance. So, you know, but those are the goals, and I hope you have a great New Year's. And I really hope to impart a message to you about the power of positivity, and, you know, really being intentional about how you spend your time, practicing self-care, and then really being focused on what matters, and, you know, cutting out things that don't. So, all right, Happy New Year, and I will see you all in 2022.